medicine with the metals. Today I got really two stellar guys. I met these two gentlemen early in my path, early on this journey of mine, and they have very powerful stories. They're very dedicated to this medicine and the education of this medicine. They've impacted a lot of people's lives. And, I'm going to introduce them. I'm going to introduce Carlos Guzman and Christopher Cobb. And whoever wants to start and introduce yourself, and let's just talk about really, really quick how you got to this path. And, we'll just have a really great conversation today.
Look forward to it. Carlos, the floor is yours, my friend.
Go ahead, Carlos. Let's talk about you, brother.
Well,
Carlos, I met you about 3 years ago, and you had a really huge impact on my life. And I know you impacted so many. You're a you're a stand-up stellar dude, and you a lot of ethics and respect for this medicine. So go ahead and introduce yourself, brother.
I'm Carlos. I've been on the this path since probably 2017. I started with the grandfather Iboga master plan, and my addictions led me to this path, right? And I wanted to know what was going on and what was going on inside of my head, and why I was behaving like that. So one thing led to another, my spiritual path and learning more about myself, and then led me to ayahuasca. Um, Led me to this beautiful space where I was able um, to do my work and also help other people. And the everything unfolded so beautifully, and found myself that it was in the path of service that I found my healing and supporting other people. So over time, as I was helping people, I realized the need. Um, how it was not kind of even the the support that the man was getting, because man was they kind of hold back their emotions. They're not so open like women, that I was able to help. And I found that it was needed, this support for man, and trying to get through the layers of the armor, and give them the support that they need, give them the platform that they need to speak up, to be able to get in touch with their feelings. So with the help of my brother Chris, we been able to work together in bringing shedding light to the to what's going on with the man, and especially man's mental health. And this has
Mhm.
brought us here. So yeah.
We'll dive into all that real shortly. Let's let Christopher introduce himself, and then we'll dive into all this because I want to talk about Iboga. I want to talk about some medicines, and people need to know all these things. So, good morning, Christopher. How are you, brother?
Good morning, Mark. Thanks for having us, brother. It's an honor to be
Thank
here
you.
with you guys.
Thank you, man.
I actually just got off listening to the Troy McFadden podcast, and that was a good lead into this. My name is Christopher. I am an integration specialist through the route of Plant Medicine Church in Orlando, Florida, where I met Carlos. What brought me to the medicine was 2 years of sobriety that was riddled with depression, anxiety, fear, unreleased trauma, old stories, all of that stuff. My first weekend at Soul Quest, I met Carlos. He actually picked me up from the airport. We had an amazing conversation on the way to Soul Quest. By the end of that weekend, he was leading group facilitation at that time and was in my tent, and he brought up being true to you. And without hearing much more information, I immediately raised my hand and said, I want to do that.
There you
And
go.
I didn't know what it looked like at the time, but I knew that that was part of my path. And
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, here we are. I think we all see that enlightenment sometimes, some way, somehow with these medicines. I mean, I could just talk for myself and say, nothing really worked. And I'm 50 years old and here I am stuck. Ayahuasca worked for me. Ayahuasca, and then I dove into so many other medicines. And Iboga, I have to say, Iboga was my most powerful. And I would say to this day, my biggest teacher. I mean, that medicine is powerful and it's still working 3 months to this day. And, all these medicines work and they all create some kind of hope. so they create a hope. And hope for men is huge right now because, we're just so broken and our lineages keep us broken. So let's talk about how we can heal this because, I'm healed. I know that from my traumas.
Well, I think the first thing that we need to do, we need to start breaking down the stigma of mental health and men. We're getting shut down because it's not okay, and in some circles, to talk about that, then you will be cast out or will be seen differently if you talk about your emotional problems or something that is not going on in your life. Society has this um, expectations of us to be strong, to be self-reliant, and not showing up vulnerability. So we need a safer space for men to discuss their mental health and our concerns, and have the support of people that are like-minded, and they're all the same level. To help change and change the stereotype of a man and mental health.
Because both of you working with veterans. So, Chris, let me ask you, like veterans, that's a hard barrier to break. And you all work with veterans at SoulQuest. So let's talk about veterans a little bit, and how far they're coming on this path with these medicines.
Yeah. Let me first clarify that I am not a veteran, and I am not qualified to speak to veterans matters. However, the veterans who have come through, whether it's the Sacred Brotherhood or the Union of Brotherhood, we have found that they are best supported in a container of men as opposed to co-ed spaces for the reasons Carlos just touched on. Um, some of the things that these guys bring to the table would not land well on the ears of a mixed crowd. But when they come into our spaces and they're allowed to speak to these things, there's a light bulb that clicks on and they feel safe and heard. And you can almost feel the pressure being relieved as they speak. And just witnessing that the first couple of times made it clear to me and to Carlos that that must always be a priority in our mission.
Hmm. Well, what do you think happens there? What do you
Yeah.
think happens is these experiences that, tried and true, it happens to almost most of us. What do you think happens that opens us up?
I think it has a lot to do with safety and security. It has to do with finally being in a place where you can drop your walls to say the things that you've been too afraid to say, whether that's trauma from war or personal traumas prior to service. Either way, these guys come in, their brows furrowed. They don't really want to be there. How can a bunch of men help them? But as they witness the men around them opening up, you can see their shell starting to disintegrate. That doesn't mean they won't put it right back on when they leave, because that's kind of the nature of complex PTSD. But for a moment, one of our guys specifically, I won't mention him by name, but every time he has a breakthrough, it's a matter of months before he's right back into old patterns, old conditioning, old thought processes. But every single time he comes back and he whittles away at it. And sometimes it just takes that. Unfortunately, not every veteran responds to plant medicines the first go around. As a matter of fact, I've seen it exacerbate problems more than I have help on the first go around. But the consistency and the commitment to showing up, whether it be to a plant medicine space or to an integration space or to the spaces that Union of Brotherhood provides, with dedication and determination and repetitive action, these men do see vast amounts of growth and healing in a short period of time.
Yeah, true to that. So what do you think, Carlos?
Yeah, number one thing is from what the man sees, the seek support from other men is they're not alone. That let's put it out there. That it's men have a higher risk of a suicide than women, and with
Mhm.
our expectations of society and our own reluctance to seek help because we were taught that we have to hang tough and all that, especially military guys. We're not supposed to, or we're not allowed to express our emotions. So the mental health support aspect of it, also helps the emotional support by letting the men know that, hey, not alone. We're here to support you. We're here to lend a hand for support. And at first, they kind of reluctant, or kind of step back a little bit and holding back. But once they start, dropping the layers, whether it's a medicine retreat or non-medicine retreats, they know they're being supported. And by the end of the retreat, they're really open and willing, and believers that there is support out there from other men.
And so let's talk. You mentioned this brotherhood. Can we talk about what that is?
Yeah, man, I can give you the rundown of our birth
Yep.
and where
Yep.
we are now.
That would be
Uh,
beautiful because you guys do a lot of things. So let's start with this.
yeah. Um, Back when Carlos was hosting men's retreats at Soul Quest, we obviously wanted to have a very robust integration process as well.
Hmm.
The facility itself didn't really have the resources to offer that space. So after, I think it was 5 men's retreats, I had gone back to volunteer facilitate, and I had connected on just Friday alone, without much effort, to 8 or 9 guys. Very
Hmm.
deep conversations that were making us late to other things, like we were deeply engaged. And then the
Right.
same thing happened Saturday morning before daytime and then after daytime. And I went to one of the powers that be at Soul Quest, and I said, "How do you feel about me doing a men's only integration this weekend?" And she looked at me and she said, "That's a great idea, but don't be surprised if not many guys come." I said,
Right.
"Fair enough, fair enough." Well, that first Saturday integration, I had 14 guys in the lodge with me. And integration typically lasts about 2 hours there. We ran into 3.5 hours before we were done, and we had to be asked to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the first instinct to me that this was a needed space,
Hmm.
against all of the odds of people saying it may or may not work, because they were hesitant to even do men's retreats to begin with. So imagine the challenge that we were up against getting support. So the weekend integrations happened. I also asked to start a weekly Zoom call on Thursdays for men only. Just kind of, that was it. That was my offering. Um, but each week that went by, more and more men were coming, to the point to where one single container could not hold all of the needs that needed to be addressed. So through talking with Carlos and my other friends who are in our leadership, we decided to move forward with doing our own thing. And we held our first retreat last September, uh, and it was a success. And it really solidified that in the integration process, there needs to be more than just conversation. I heard Troy talk about on his podcast about engaging in practices that help motivate the release of trauma. We can talk about these things. We can have circles and go for hours and hours and hours about talking. But with men specifically, we need to do more. We need to move our bodies. We need to be engaged on the ground with other men in non-plant medicine arenas, so that we can truly integrate our traumas, or release our traumas and integrate this information that we have received from the plant medicine journeys.
So
You
what
know,
are some suggestions there? Show us, tell the audience some things out there that you would suggest to do, say in those experiences outside of those for men.
well, we do a lot of things like movement practices, everything from somatic dance, or what people call ecstatic dance. We also do elemental movement. Our guy Josh Braden is a pro at that, and gets us moving in ways that we've never thought about. We also bring on practitioners from other organizations that bring in movement exercises. um, screaming, drumming, anything that gets our heart rate up, gets our entire body moving, and keeps us engaged in the process has really high success.
Yeah, it's amazing how tone, sound, and music really can move that trauma, right, Carlos?
Yeah, and absolutely, the one of the important things here is this kind of movements and all that. It brings us back into our bodies. As men,
Mhm.
we live, a great percentage of our day in lives, inside of our head, and we're, overthinking, and it's a lot of stuff going on, self judgment and planning and all that, and we forget about, our body, and these activities that we do, brings the men back into their bodies, and it is just fun. It is conducive to, to connecting with other men and connecting to the earth, connecting to our bodies. It's there's a way that we have seen that there has a lot of improvement in the emotional state of the man, and also it allows the men to be able to deal with their emotions, in a proactive way as well.
Beautiful. Now, are you guys going to be doing a lot more of these retreats coming up?
Oh yeah, we actually have one scheduled at the end of July in Greensboro,
July?
North
Okay.
Carolina. Yep,
We'll
July.
definitely post that. Are you at one specific location? Are you just with Agape, or do you move around, or you tell
No,
us?
we move around. The one in July is in Greensboro, North Carolina. We've had one here in Virginia. We've had one in Florida. We have plans to go to Agape. We have plans to go to Costa Rica even. We have 3 or 4 retreats planned out. The one specifically that's next is called Challenge Accepted, and it kind of goes in line with what we're talking about, where from start to finish, everything is about how we show up in the world, whether it be relationships, professionally, in our solo time with our children. So the entire retreat will be centered around uh, integrating our old stories into new ways of doing things.
Hmm.
Um,
That's the answer right there, isn't it?
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the answer. So, do you guys just concentrate on ayahuasca, or because I've seen some powerful studies lately, especially through Stanford, with PTSD and with military vets, with Aboga and 5-MeO. I mean, just amazing results. So, are you only working with ayahuasca right now? And I know it's not only the medicine; medicines are the catalyst. But
Right.
We have found a strict difference between working with the medicine and working without the medicine. And
yeah,
me personally, one of my best works that I've done on myself has been without the medicine.
yes, for
There is
sure.
a need and a calling to break the walls and kind of
Hmm.
open the heart space of the man to get there, which is that's the medicine, particularly ayahuasca and other medicines as well. Get there, but there comes a part of action, and this is where union of brotherhood comes in. To
Yeah,
complement that in a very nice way, to get the man into action. To do what we say we're gonna do, when
right.
we are in the medicine space, when we are mind and heart are open, and all these possibilities and ideas come in, this is the plan of action. But most of the times that we've seen is people, when they go back to their homes, within a matter of 1 or 2 weeks, they go back to the old
Yeah,
life. Why? Because they don't have support, and this is where
yeah,
union of brotherhood comes in.
yeah. And I think also because they start getting uncomfortable without the support. You start getting uncomfortable. I mean, for me, that's where all my learning started beginning, when I started getting uncomfortable and throwing new things in there. But when people don't know this and they don't have that support, my biggest thing leaving the portal of Soul Quest is why we started all this, is because we were throwing these people out to the wolves and they had nothing to turn to. They were just kept coming back for the medicine. The medicine's the catalyst. There's so many other things, beautiful things out there. Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree, which is one of the reasons I requested to do the men's integration, because I saw time and time again men not returning to the co-ed spaces. Uh, One of the major differences between men and women in the medicine spaces is everybody goes, especially to an ayahuasca space, to get in touch with their heart. And for women, that feels like a more permanent thing. That doesn't mean that their lives are automatically easy when they leave,
Mhm.
but the part of their hearts that they've been able to get in touch with in a medicine space seems to have a more lasting effect with women than it does with men. Going back to the point of Carlos saying, we get back in our heads. We have
Yeah.
forgotten about the connection from our heart to our head. And when
Mhm.
we get dropped off without any support, one of the first things that goes through our mind was, I knew it was fake. I knew this was bullshit. I knew it wouldn't work for me.
Yeah.
When in
But there's
reality,
something that go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead.
No, there's something that brings people back though. A lot of these guys come back. They just don't know how. There's something. They're always saying it's bullshit, but something brings them back. Something's clicking.
Well, it's only their ego that's saying that's bullshit. Their
Yeah.
soul
Mhm.
and their heart is telling them, like, man, remember that feeling
But
you
but
had?
the
That
but
was
the real
real.
fact,
I'm,
The matter of the fact for how these guys come back to the medicine. These guys come back to the medicine. Something happens. So,
right?
there's some kind
Oh
of
well,
catalyst there.
right. What I've seen in the space is that people do come back because they said, oh, I missed something, I didn't get something, and they were using something external as the medicine to say, okay, I need this in order to feel whole, in order to fix this, but they forget about the hard work, the groundwork. As our dear Bob would say, you have to do the work, and the work is done exactly when you feel uncomfortable, when you feel lost. That's exactly, people will see it as a negative when it actually is a positive. You have a, this is where you need to work when you feel that discomfort. But what happened with the men is because they didn't have any outlets, any support group, and they were not provided to them, then they will go back to the medicine to so the medicine can hammer down that change or knowledge or whatever they need, but they lack the support group that they needed on the outside, which is this is what we're trying to foster.
Hmm. Now, these integration calls, Chris, you started these brotherhood integration calls, and some people were telling you at the beginning that, you know, they didn't think a lot of people would show up, and they did. And I think the reason they showed up is because they saw something that they needed, but they didn't. Why I showed up to these integration calls all the time was because no matter if I didn't say something or said something, it worked. Something worked in these calls. They just work.
yeah. I think for men specifically, the resistance to going into a space is that we automatically feel as though we have to perform in some way. Because a lot of what I hear is, do I have to turn my camera on? Do I have to say anything?
Mhm,
But you just hit it. If you can just convince these men to just come in and listen,
mhm.
almost 90 to 100% of the time they'll be back.
Right.
They just need to know that they're safe. They just need to know that men are doing real work, talking about real things, and not just sitting around crying and whining and moping about their lives.
And what do we talk about when we're not talking about real things? I mean, listen, what do we actually talk about? And it comes to this transition. Like, we'll talk about in real things, us three, but in the real world, real guys talk about bullshit. It's
Bullshit.
just,
Yeah.
so it's pretty amazing what you guys are doing. That's really cool, and continue that work. You also do a few other things. You mind? Let's talk a little bit because this is a really important thing. This passionate warrior. I think they do a lot of things with this. I don't think passionate warrior is only for veterans, is it, Carlos? It's for a lot of people.
No, well, actually, Passionate Warrior is not for veterans. Passionate Warriors is for the spouses, the civilians, yeah, the other
Hmm.
people that are not veterans. We do have a program in collaboration with Wellness Retreat Alliance, which is led by Justin Smith, which is the channel for veterans and first responders. And we created a collaboration where we see, okay, well, the veteran is getting the help they need by bringing them into ceremony, into the medicine, but what about their spouses? What about the people that live with this veteran? So this is where Passionate Warrior comes in, and with the support of the community, we bring the spouses in. We bring the people that need the healing, but they absolutely cannot afford it. That's what the Passionate Warrior sponsorship program is all about.
Yeah, that's pretty important, don't you think, Chris? I mean, to get family involved with this all. I mean, a lot of family is resistant to it in the beginning, but I think once they see that evolution, there's no denying what happens.
without a doubt. Without it,
Yeah.
and it doesn't take much effort. It's not like we come home and start proselytizing and preaching the ways of the plant medicine. Wives and girlfriends, especially, uh, gain more from the witness of us and how we've changed and how we show up to our lives. And then they become encouraged to maybe take a look at them at their part in life and either want to do plant medicine retreats or get more involved with the integration of their spouses uh,
Mhm.
processes.
I see my children more so than anything are the most responsive to it. Even though they're a little resistant, I think my 19-year-old's really coming around and my 20-some-year-old is like he's the more resistant, but they see the changes in me. And I don't think they want to carry this lineage onto their kids because they definitely will.
They definitely will.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that's another part of the witness that's so beautiful is that we're not telling our kids, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing all this stuff so that you don't have to suffer. But when that dynamic shift happens in us as fathers, their attitudes change right alongside of it without them even knowing. And it's one of the most beautiful things to witness.
Yes, you hit it because we're not sitting there telling them, analyzing, talk therapy. We're just showing them, we're
Yeah.
showing up, I guess is perfect.
Yep.
Another amazing thing you do, Carlos, and I've been served by you before, is Cambo. You are the Cambo man. And you have served so many people, and touched so many in that area. And let's talk a little bit about Cambo and the benefits of it.
Well, that one of the main reasons I do this, is the service that I offer to people to be able to get outside of their comfort zones. I believe that this is a very powerful tool to get you into a state of discomfort. So once you work through those challenges, you can become more resilient and and be able to cope and manage with whatever it is that you're dealing with, whether it's something that you're dealing mental, physical, emotional. And Cambo is a good, it's an ordeal medicine that it can get you, it can put you in a state of discomfort, so you can push through those challenges, and be able to work with it. It also helps to bring the body back into balance. That's one of the main functions of Cambo on the physical level, is to bring the body back into balance. As it comes to the medicine space, it's a good process to do before you sit with the medicine, because it allows the cleanse the body and also prepares the vessel to go into the medicine space. So I've been honored and grateful to be able to help people,
Yeah.
through Campbell.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful tool on this path. All
Mm.
these medicines are powerful. And, thank you so much, guys, for everything you do. I think both of you are just, so important to this community, so important to the message, the education, and the information. We just got to continue to do this in every way, shape, and form we're doing it. Keep passing it on because we know these medicines work. They're definitely catalysts and they will give us hope and a brighter outlook for sure.
Absolutely.
No, thank you, Mark.
Mhm. Thank you, guys. Love you both, man. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.